In the quiet mountain town of Cresthaven, nestled among the snow-dusted peaks of the Windrift Range, a tiny snow leopard cub named Kale was found shivering on a rocky outcrop. The family who rescued him had no clue how he'd blend into their home, already ruled by three regal Himalayan kittens, Luna, Frost, and Ember. These fluffy monarchs ran the household with iron paws and a strict code of conduct. What happens when a wild-born snow leopard, unaccustomed to the comforts of domestic life, is thrust into a world of pampered felines? This is the tale of two species bound by one of the most peculiar and heartwarming sibling bonds ever. Clara Whitmore, a 70-year-old weaver with hands calloused from decades at the loom and a heart warmed by 45 years of marriage to her husband, Elias, cherished her solitary hikes through the frosty trails of Cresthaven. These walks were less about exercise and more about the stillness, the crisp scent of cedar, and the distant howl of wind through the peaks. But on a chilly Wednesday in early November, the silence shattered. As Clara's battered Jeep navigated a winding mountain pass, its headlights caught a glint of movement on a rocky ledge. She eased to a stop, her curiosity piqued. Expecting a lost fox or marmot, she was stunned to see a tiny, trembling ball of silvery fur, no larger than a teacup, letting out a plaintive wail that echoed in the twilight. Clara parked, her boots crunching on the gravel. The creature was a kitten, but not like any she'd seen. Its pale, spotted fur shimmered under the moonlight, and its oversized paws hinted at a future far larger than any house cat. Its emerald eyes glowed with fear, and nearby, a grim patch of disturbed snow suggested a tragic end for its mother. "Poor little thing," Clara whispered, her breath fogging in the cold. The cub flinched, attempting a growl that was more of a squeak. Clara's heart melted. She slipped off her wool scarf, gently wrapped the cub in its warmth, and felt it nestling against her, too weak to resist. Back at their cedar-shingled cabin, Elias was stoking the fireplace, the scent of burning pine mingling with his famous rosemary bread cooling on the counter. He raised an eyebrow as Clara stepped inside, her face a mix of worry and determination. "Got held up, Eli," she said, unfolding the scarf to reveal the cub. Elias leaned in, his weathered face softening. "Good gracious, Clara, where'd you find that?" "By the pass, all alone." The cub let out a feeble purr as Elias stroked its head. "It's half-starved. And those paws, look at 'em." The next morning, they bundled the cub into a blanket and drove to Cresthaven's sole veterinarian, Dr. Lila Thornton, a woman with a sharp mind and a knack for handling the region's wilder residents. She set the cub on her exam table, her eyes narrowing as she studied its spotted coat and tufted ears. "Clara, Elias, you've outdone yourselves," she said with a chuckle. "This is no stray. It's a snow leopard cub, Panthera unchia. Can't be more than 4 weeks old." The Whitmores exchanged a glance. "A snow leopard in their living room?" Dr. Thornton continued. "The right thing is to call the Regional Wildlife Center, but they're swamped with orphaned wolf pups and an eagle with a busted wing. They might not have space." Clara watched the cub lap at a drop of milk from her finger, its tiny body trembling. "We'll take him in," she said firmly. "Just till he's stronger." Elias nodded. "Needs a name. How about Kale?" Dr. Thornton sighed, half amused, half exasperated. "All right, but brace yourselves. He's not a house cat. His instincts are a whole different beast. And you've got your trio to contend with." The trio, Luna, Frost, and Ember, were the Whitmores' Himalayan kittens, 6 months old and the undisputed lords of the cabin. Luna, a cream and chocolate beauty, ruled with a queenly air, her piercing blue eyes passing judgment from her perch on the quilted armchair. Frost, a snowy white fluffball, was a household perfectionist, grooming his coat to a glossy sheen and meowing indignantly if his routine was disrupted. Ember, a flame point with a mischievous streak, treated every curtain as a climbing wall and every shadow as a foe to vanquish. Introducing Kale was chaos from the start. Clara set the cub, now fed a bottle of formula, on the woven rug by the hearth. The Himalayans, lounging in a patch of sunlight, snapped to attention. Luna glided forward, her tail flicking like a metronome, sniffing the air with suspicion at Kale's wild, musky scent. Frost puffed up like a snowball, hissing from a safe distance. Ember, bold as ever, crept close, let out a brave yowl, then backflipped when Kale chirped in response, scampering to hide behind a cushion. Kale, overwhelmed by the trio's fluffy intensity, bolted under the coffee table and refused to budge. The first weeks were a whirlwind of disorder. Feeding time was a circus. Luna, Frost, and Ember daintily nibbled their kibble for matching stoneware bowls. Kale, however, attacked his dish like it was prey, plunging his paws into the milk-soaked mash and smearing it across his spotted face. Half the meal ended up on Clara's polished pine floor. Elias grabbed a rag, became her daily mantra. Playtime was even wilder. The Himalayans chased feather toys and laser dots with elegant precision. Kale, oblivious to such games, pounced on flickering firelight reflections, stalked stray pine needles with deadly focus, and wrestled his own tail until he tumbled into a chair leg with a muffled thud. The trio would pause, heads tilted in unison, as if watching a bizarre mountain creature invade their civilized world. Yet Kale was determined to belong. Though his snow leopard instincts urged him to climb and hunt, his deepest drive was to join this strange, soft pack. Luna, embracing her role as the group's matriarch, took it upon herself to tame the wildling. Her first lesson? The fine art of ambushing Elias's slippers from under the couch, a skill Kale approached with far too much enthusiasm, leaving claw marks in the leather. Luna demonstrated with flawless precision, her sleek body pressed low to the pine floor, her hindquarters quivering with anticipation. As Elias shuffled by in his worn wool slippers, she darted out a single paw, delicately hooking his ankle before vanishing behind the armchair. A textbook ambush, executed with royal finesse. Kale watched from beneath the coffee table, his emerald eyes glinting with focus. He processed the lesson. Hide. Quiver. Strike the moving thing. Moments later, Clara fired up the vacuum cleaner, its roar filling the cabin like a mountain storm. Kale saw his moment. He crouched, his spotted body trembling with such intensity that his stubby tail twitched like a metronome. Then he launched a full-body assault, wrapping all four oversized paws around the vacuum's hose. Chaos erupted. Kale clung on as the hose thrashed, Clara yelped in surprise, and the three Himalayans, Luna, Frost, and Ember, bolted for the safety of the loft, their tails puffed like dandelions. Elias, doubled over with laughter, finally pried the trembling snow leopard cub from the beast, cradling him as Kale's heart raced. Next, Frost took it upon himself to teach Kale some refinement. Frost was horrified by Kale's reckless tail-chasing, viewing his own luxurious tail as a tool of elegance, a silken banner for subtle expressions. On the hearthrug, he sat primly, swishing his tail in a slow, hypnotic arc before curling it neatly around his paws. He fixed Kale with an expectant stare. Kale, eager to learn, tried to mimic him, but his short, spotted tail was more punctuation mark than poetry. He flicked it so vigorously he lost his balance, his massive paws tangling as he somersaulted across the polished cedar floor, crashing into a side table. Clara's prized alpine fern toppled, scattering soil and fronds. Clara sighed, closed her eyes, and counted to 10. Ember, the fearless thrill-seeker, focused on teaching Kale the art of climbing. For Ember, gravity was a mere suggestion. The floor-to-ceiling drapes in the dining nook were his personal Himalayan peak. He demonstrated, scaling the heavy fabric with silent, nimble paws, reaching the valance to survey his domain before sliding down like a seasoned mountaineer. Kale was entranced. He backed up, took a running leap, and hit the drapes like an avalanche. Where Ember was precise, Kale was raw power. The fabric tore, the curtain rod splintered, and Kale landed in a triumphant heap, dragging yards of shredded linen around the cabin like a royal cloak. Elias found him parading through the kitchen, the rod clattering behind. "Clara," he called, chuckling, "we need a cat tree. A very sturdy one." The litter box was its own adventure. For the Himalayans, it was a private ritual, conducted with dignity. For Kale, it was a snowy playground. He dug with wild abandon, flinging clay litter across the utility room, pouncing on clumps, and occasionally napping in the clean box, as if it were a frosty den. Clara invested in a massive covered litter box, resembling a futuristic igloo, which at least contained the worst of the debris. Slowly, a transformation took hold. The chaos remained, but it was laced with moments of connection. The turning point came one snowy afternoon when Clara returned from checking her winter garden. In Elias's oversized armchair, she found the 4 cats curled together. Luna, Frost, and Ember formed a protective circle, their fluffy tails overlapping, with Kale nestled snugly in the center, his soft snores blending with their gentle purrs. It was a silent vow, "You're one of us." Clara tiptoed away, her eyes misty. Kale's wild instincts began to soften under his siblings' influence. He learned to play with Ember using sheathed claws. His pounces on toys, purchased in bulk by Elias, grew gentler. His purr, unlike the Himalayan soft hum, was a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the cabin's floorboards, a sound of pure contentment. He even tried their affectionate headbutts, though his enthusiastic version was more of a firm head bonk that made Elias laugh every time. One evening, a stray wolf prowled into the yard, growling at the ravens perched on the fence. Inside, the Himalayans lined up at the window, backs arched, hissing in unison. Kale sauntered over, placed his massive paws on the sill, and stared out. He didn't hiss. He unleashed a low guttural growl, a primal sound that echoed the wild peaks of the Windrift Range. The wolf froze, whimpered, and slunk away. Luna, Frost, and Ember turned to their strange brother with newfound respect. He wasn't just their clumsy sibling. He was their guardian. Months turned into a year. The kittens were now majestic young cats, and Kale was no longer a tiny cub. At nearly 25 pounds, he was a sleek, powerful adolescent snow leopard. His spotted coat and piercing gaze a reminder of his mountain heritage. Yet he was undeniably a Whitmore. Dr. Thornton visited for her annual house call, a courtesy for her oldest clients. She stepped into the cabin and froze, her eyes wide at the sight of Kale sprawled across the rug, Luna grooming his ears while Ember batted at his tail. "Well," she said, shaking her head, "you've turned a snow leopard into a house cat. I'll be darned." The scene before Dr. Thornton was one of serene, almost surreal harmony. Luna was meticulously grooming Kale's silvery head, her small tongue smoothing the fur around his tufted ears. Frost lazily batted at Kale's short, spotted tail as it flicked in his sleep. Kale himself sprawled on his back across the hearth rug, his oversized paws splayed skyward, utterly at ease. "My stars," Dr. Thornton murmured, setting down her bag. "I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it." As she examined each cat, she marveled at Kale's condition, robust, sleek, and astonishingly gentle. "You know, Elias," she said, listening to Kale's heart, his deep, rumbling purr vibrating through the stethoscope, "I was wrong to doubt you and Clara. But this sight brings up a hard truth." Clara and Elias exchanged a glance, a flicker of unease tightening their chests. "He's imprinted on you completely," Dr. Thornton explained softly, "and on these cats. He thinks he's one of them. He never learned to hunt from his mother, never learned the laws of the wild. Releasing him now would be a death sentence. He wouldn't last a week." The weight of their impulsive act of compassion a year ago settled heavily. They had saved Kale's life, but in doing so, they had forever altered his path. He was caught between worlds, neither fully wild nor wholly domestic. Clara's eyes brimmed as she gazed at the magnificent snow leopard, now entirely reliant on them. She reached down, stroking his head, and he leaned into her touch, pressing his broad forehead against her hand with a soft, rumbling nuzzle. That night, a fierce blizzard howled outside, rattling the cabin's windows and cloaking Cresthaven in snow. Inside, the fireplace cast a warm, flickering glow across the room. Elias sat in his armchair, a book open but unread in his lap. Clara rocked gently in her chair, her knitting needles clicking a quiet rhythm. The 3 Himalayans, Luna, Frost, and Ember, draped themselves over the furniture like living tapestries. Kale stretched out on the woven rug by the fire, a picture of tranquility. For a while, he simply watched the flames dance. Then Ember, ever the troublemaker, hopped down and began pawing at the tassel of Clara's knitting bag. tugging at a loose thread. Kale's emerald eyes flicked toward the motion. With fluid grace, he rose and padded silently over. He didn't growl or swat. Instead, he gently nudged Ember with his broad head, freeing the thread. It was a brotherly reprimand. Leave it. Don't bother Mom. Then he settled by Clara's rocker, resting his tufted head on her slippered foot. He looked up, his wild, intelligent eyes meeting hers, and gave a slow, deliberate blink, a gesture of trust and love he'd learned from his adopted siblings. Clara's knitting fell still in her lap. A single tear traced down her cheek, not of sorrow or worry, but of profound, improbable joy. Elias glanced over his book, his own eyes misty. They hadn't just rescued a snow leopard cub. They had woven an extraordinary thread into the fabric of their lives. Kale wasn't a wild beast trapped in a cabin, nor was he merely a house cat. He was something more, Kale Whitmore, a cherished brother, a devoted son, a permanent and beloved part of a home brimming with love as fierce and wondrous as the mountains he came from.